to have a fine young lady do something once in a while around here. That's great, James.
This song I'm singing this morning is just a very scratchy throat can get through this. At a loss for words, it's okay. It's to what you would you put down eyes to see still and know. Please let me stay and word of God speak. Midst of you, beyond the noise, is to be with you. I'll hear your voice. Would you put down eyes to see your majesty in this place? In your holiness, pour down like rain. Your majesty, to be still and know that you're in this place. Please let me stay and rest in your holiness. I'm finding myself at a loss for words, and the funny thing is, it's okay. And now Brother Jacob is going to bring us the message.
I was expecting this to be like, party, all right. And it was a slow song, which nothing wrong with that. Hey, everyone, how are you doing? Good. I'm trying to liven you all up this morning. What's up, Joe? How you doing? Threw her off guard. John, Michelle, Rachel, Justin. We got Rick over here with Jenny, Ethan, Amanda. I told you guys I wanted 2 stools. What happened? But it's all good. All right. Is this thing on? All right, it's good. I'm going to bring this up to me. So, my sermon title today is A Conversation. And the conversation that we're going to be having today is we're going to be discussing the state of the church, big C. But we're also going to discuss it, and we're going to talk about little c a little bit as well. We're going to talk about here at Montana. And in a little while. But, disclaimer, all of the information that I am providing today comes from my many conversations with pastors in higher up leadership at the local church, professors at my Bible college, and professors at different Christian universities. I wanted to get their general thoughts on a lot of different things And what would you know when you start venting to you as well, which I absolutely love, because you just get to hear all the juicy little things that not the average person gets to hear. And they're always just like, now don't tell nobody this and don't let them know my name. But here's what we're talking about, giving you some context. And that context is that today there are many pastors across the world, and I'm really focusing specifically on the United States, that are just simply saying, I'm done. We're done with it. Whether it be because of a lack of compensation, whether it be because they are being overworked, so they're not just the pastor, they are also maintenance, they are also housekeeping. There are multiple different titles besides pastor. Whether it's just simply the emotional stress of being a pastor, because as a pastor, you're dealing with things that people don't really have to deal with unless you're in the medical field. But you're having to deal with sickness and death. And I'm meaning more along the lines of having to go and address the families as they're going through people having sickness and death. Having to go and do some things that they can possibly do. So sometimes they have to deal with that, and it's emotional stress piled and piled and piled on top of them. Also, the hardship that people miss and death, but they also have to just have conversations with people as they're going through multiple different hardships, whether it just be their day-to-day lives, whether somebody is going through a divorce, but there's always one thing that is common in their response. And that is the strain. Everything that I'm saying today comes from other people. If you don't agree with my opinion, most likely it's not my opinion. And we're going to takes. And if you don't know what a hot take is, it just means I'm going to say something you might not agree with. The strain that they receive from the congregation can put a very large strain on a pastor to where they're getting their white hairs a lot earlier than you would think. Pastors, sometimes when they're overworked, when they're having to do all the things that they're doing, the congregation can come to them, and instead of giving them encouragement and thanking them for what they did, somebody in the congregation instead comes up to them with their problems, comes up to them and complains about what's going on in the church and how the pastor can do things better. And that puts a large emotional toll on them. Sometimes congregations can be abusive and or just simply unhealthy. Their spiritual health is not good. My church, when I was growing up as a kid, was extremely unhealthy. The pastor's son that was there, me and him were best friends growing up, and we reunited in college. We're best friends now. And I remember one day we're sitting in his apartment, and I said, give me all the details about what was going on in that church. And I'm not going into all those details, but there was a lot of scandalous stuff going on. The spiritual health was just as low can get. The church was slowly losing members because people were realizing that. But the people who were just kind of stuck in their ways and living that way, they stayed. But he said that his dad, who was the pastor, who I wildly respect, and he actually was a very great spiritual mentor to my brother, His dad went through some of the most stressful times of his life, like attacks. He experienced multiple different things. Demonic attacks is as extreme as you can possibly get, but along with that, it's just simply the unhealthiness that was in that church. Spiritually, emotionally, everything that you can think of. And eventually he just said, I can't do anything here because this congregation does not want to change. This congregation listens to my warnings, and there is nothing that I can do anymore. So I'm leaving. Since then, they had got a new pastor. My family decided to leave as well, go somewhere better. That church shut down. What would you think? Somebody else tried to buy it out, but I do not doubt that the the taint that was on that church was probably very present and just shoot everything away. It's a little bit off topic. But we are currently in a time that many are calling the Great Resignation. Now, that's not only in the culture that we're experiencing now. We saw, yeah. I think everybody should raise your hand because whether or not you really noticed it, we're probably getting used to those now hiring signs. We're going through a great resignation in the United States, but we're also going through something called a great resignation when it comes to pastors. Now, a lot of big pastors that are making plenty of money, I'm more or less talking about smaller churches. Smaller churches are losing their pastors because of a lot of the things that I was talking about, where they're losing them because of all of the lack of compensation. They're being overworked. There's literally many things that you can put on top of that, but it's just a stressful job. And pastors are starting to realize that I can do something better with my time. Because that might sound selfish, but listen, we all got families. We all have mouths to feed. We all got bills to pay. And we also have to commit that time to our family. Family and your relationship with God comes first. So if it's putting that much of a toll on a pastor, they're realizing, hey, this job really isn't worth it. Especially in the United States, I can do probably multiple other things ministry-wise that are going to be a better use of my time. Now, I want to make another thing clear, and that thing is this, is that Montana, this church here, you guys are not like that. All right? Very clear. Pastor Dave, Chris Bean, who visited here recently, I had met with him, and then also Bob Mahaffey, and really anybody that I meet that's sort of in leadership that knows about this church, say that this church is exceptionally healthy. Let me say that again. This church is exceptionally healthy. People are willing to come and do the things that you need them to do. When I was here and I needed a volunteer, I could always find somebody to help me do things. Just about any of you were willing to help me. And also, just in general, from what I see, the spiritual health of the majority of the leadership here and the congregation in general is just good. From what I can see, it's just good. And you can feel it. You can feel it when you're here as well. So the main reason that I'm really bringing all of this up is right now, Montana is in a point of transition. There is no pastor here. Now, don't feel guilty and think that there's anything wrong with the church, because honestly, what the church offers, it's not bad. It's pretty good. It's just that there literally is not that many people, as you all know. I think most of you know that. And our ministerial division usually had probably 30 to 40 kids. So majority guys in there in our suits and ties, and we're all there studying pastoral ministry or biblical biblical and theological studies, and we're just like, we're going to be pastors. What am I doing now? I work sales at a chemical company, and I'm helping start up a videography business. I still do ministry. Yeah, I'm here and I'm right now. What are the majority of the guys that I know that were in that division? What are they doing? The majority of them are not pastoring at this point. I know probably 3. And I went through at least, in my time there, probably at least 100 more guys. A lot of them realize, wow, from what I see in the current pastoral, just people that they know, this seems like a very stressful job that isn't going to help me support my family. I just got this job offer over here because now I have a bachelor's degree that's going to pay me a full-time salary and I can support my family. So they go over there. It's just as simple as that. Because pastoring is a stressful job. And I'm saying all this because nowadays, a lot of the growth on the church and a lot of the things that are going on, pastors rely on their congregation for that help. They really do. They can't come in as a superhero and take over and expect the church to grow 100 times more and the spiritual health to go crazy. Yes, they have to be a good leader. They have to have those good leadership skills, but they need the help of their congregation. And now the reason that I'm bringing this up is because I want to just put ideas in everyone's heads from the conversations that I've had with you. Maybe I can do this. Let me go and see how I can help George. What are ideas that George has going on, that Ethan has going on, that David Grimes has going on, that Ralph has going on? What kind of ideas are they having that I can help support, that I can put in my time and effort? Things, so that you can keep track with me. There's 3 things that I'm going to talk about today that are my 3 main points. The first one is attracting. So attracting people to the church. The second one, so witnessing to non-believers and witnessing to them our story, how we came to Christ. And then the last one is retaining. What is it that makes people stay in the church? How can we keep people in the church? Now, we're going to go ahead and we're going to tackle the attracting part. Disclaimer again. The first thing that should be attracting people to the church is just the guidance of the Holy Spirit in general. That is the first thing that should be attracting people to the church. And also the fruits of the Spirit that the church is displaying that is attracting people into the church as well. But I kind of want to just get down to the nitty gritty of things. Just, some very specific things that we can talk about. What is it that draws believers? Okay. And as I was talking to some people about this, I just think it's very funny, the contrast of the 2 things of what it is that draws in these 2 groups. Now, I want to go ahead and talk about what is it that attracts believers. Think about it for just a second in a little 5-second moment of silence. What is it that drew everyone here to come to this church, whether you were a believer or a non-believer? Just think about it. And if I never mentioned it, come up to me after the service and tell me. What is it? Faith. Faith. All right. one I wasn't going to mention, but there you go. Go ahead. Friendliness. All right. Does anybody else want to say what attracted you to this church real quick? Give me two more. Jesus. That's right, John. What's another one? Give me one more. Believing. All right. All right, let's get down to what is it that attracts believers. This is what all of my sources told me that they really see is what attracts people that are already Christians. Now, these are people that are already Christians. They have accepted Jesus into their life, as far as we know, and they are now coming to this church. Believers to a church. One of the biggest things that doesn't really budge when it comes to people that are already believers is the denomination of the church. You got Ralph over here who's more of a Baptist and he's coming to a Nazarene church. That is a big exception right there. Because usually people try to stick to the denomination that they've grown up in. I grew up in a Nazarene church. Here I am at a Nazarene church. And usually if I go to another, I actually still am going to a Nazarene church. And if I go to any other church, if I decided I'm going to go to a different church, I might consider going to a Baptist church. But more than likely, I'm going to stick with churches that have the name Nazarene, Wesleyan. That's really about it. Because if I can't find a Nazarene church, I'm out in the boonies. Like, because there's Nazarene churches all over the place. So people are going to stick with the denomination that they've come to. And honestly, if somebody is saying, hey, I'm going to stick to the denomination that I'm going to, that's perfectly fine. There's plenty of churches in the area that can support whatever need it is that they have when it comes to that. Another thing that draws someone to the church is the age of the people in the church, the ethnicity of those people in the church, and then also the marital status of the people that are in that church. So, Gloria's giving me a weird look. Gloria, think about it. Isn't it kind of true, though? Whenever, for example, when I was here associate pastoring, and anybody that I drew in was other white Bible college students. Think about the people that came here because of me. Didn't they not look like and were similar in age to me? They were just in general similar to me. People like to go somewhere where they don't stand out. I was talking to a lady when I was working at LA Fitness. She was signing up and we're just chatting. And somehow it came up that I was a Christian, that I was pastoring before I had started working there. And she's just like, oh, you should come to my church sometime. She was like a 6-year-old, like African-American lady that went to a church of like 30 people. And in my mind, I'm just like, I'm totally down to go there. Like, I was cool with it. I didn't because I lost the pamphlet she gave me and I never saw her again. It's a huge bummer. But I told her, I was just like, just in general, we go places where people look like us. And I just straight up asked her, I was like, do any white people go to your church? She's like, no, but, you know, she's like, first one. And I was just like, all right. Oh. I mean, I was going to go because I was just like, man, that'd be fun. There are a lot of us white people. We suck. Get worship going on. I mean, I'm the same way. I'm just how it goes. Yeah, it's just how it goes. It's just two different cultures. But people go to the places where people look like them. So, for example, that all really stems from the leadership in the church, the pastor. Who do you think Pastor Dave would draw mainly to the church whenever he was pastoring? More than likely, couples that are in their 50s or 60s that are couples, that are married. And then he has an assistant pastor who's a young single white guy and then he draws in young single white people. You can look at statistics from, I forget what they're called, the Pew Research, where they just study that kind of stuff. And it's true. People just go where the people look like them. That's just the way it is. Now, there's obviously exceptions to that, but it's very few and rare. So I told my buddy, I said, for example, if I was the main pastor and I had an assistant, say that I brought my cousin on. My cousin's mixed, so he's half black, half white. If he came in and say he was married, I wasn't, and I was the main pastor, we'd be drawing in a lot of single white people, and then we'd be drawing in like mixed couples, black couples, maybe even white couples. But we'd be drawing in couples because of his marital status, and we'd be drawing in those different ethnicities just because of what we look like. That's what we would be drawing in. That's just how it is. And then that trickles down. When you start bringing those people in, they start becoming in the leadership. That's what they're going to look like as well. I just went on like a 5-minute rant about that. That's okay. I don't think anybody really ever thinks about that because it's just like, oh, the pastor, he's going to bring in all kinds of people. No, he usually brings in what he looks like, and then et cetera, et cetera. Another thing that draws in believers to the church are programs that are offered by the church. And what do I mean by programs? That literally means everything. It means whether or not the church has children's church. When couples come into the church and they say whether they're 5 or above, they want those kids to go to the children's church so then they can concentrate on what the pastor's talking about. Kids can be a distraction when they're at church. Nothing wrong with putting them in the nursery. And then the nursery for babies like Amelia. Why isn't Amelia in the nursery? Exactly. Where's the nursery at? What's going on here? She's asleep right now, so that's a blessing. But usually people like to come, here is my child. Come sit down, and then it's more of it's a relief. Also, what is the church teaching? Sunday school, what are they offering? Another thing about Sunday school, yes, you may be offering these Sunday school classes, but let me ask you about your Sunday school teachers. Are they winging it? Are they putting in the time and dedication to making sure that what they're teaching is good? Are we just teaching random things like, this is how Jesus loves you, and then how to kickstart your business? Or is it very direct stuff of, you are a new believer. These are the things that you should be learning. This person is sort of in the middle with their faith, and they've told us that. We're going to teach them these things. These people, they know their foundations. They know this stuff. They know it. So we're going to go and dive into some deeper stuff, some controversial topics. Or maybe people just want to choose what it is that they're learning. Maybe you want to talk about some books in the New Testament. I really want to study Romans. So you offer, hey, we're going to really dig into Romans. And you've got some Sunday school teachers that are able to dedicate their time to it, offer really good courses that is just like, wow, I really thought today, instead of I just sat there and we just kind of did whatever. It was whatever. Let me tell you, when the courses of a Sunday school are good and it's very obvious whether or not someone has dedicated the time to them or not, that's going to draw people in. If they learn, hey, Montana has a really good class on this. Oh, yeah, I want to join that. That's cool. So one way you're going to draw in believers is having really good programs that are going to draw them in. Oh, yeah, I got to dive into another. This is a hot take. Everybody knows what a hot take is now, right? You might disagree with it. And I'm saying this because in a way it's kind of calling out Montana, but it's not at the same time. Back before COVID happened, when we were having our evening services, do you guys remember when we were going to change it to where we went to people's homes instead of coming to the sanctuary? Because we kind of were just like, hey, how many people come to evening service compared to the morning service? It's like 5% or 10% of what you have in the morning service. Now listen here, hot take. I'm going to be just completely honest with everybody. I don't like evening services. Straight up. Come at me, Gloria. Let's go. Just me personally, when I come worship on Sunday morning, I just want to go home. I want to take a nap and not worry about having to wake up. You know, I take like 5 hour, 6 hour naps. I basically go to sleep. Sometimes it's honestly a problem because I wake up feeling worse than what I did. But that's just the way it is. People just don't come to the evening services because they have things to do. They got work the next day, and they just really just don't want to come to that or something like that. And and then immediately after the morning service is done, we have these classes that people are designated to go to based on age or what they're interested in. And what happened? Instead of him having evening services that were just 10% of his congregation, because he had the same issue, now everyone in his congregation stays after church because they have coffee and treats, and then they go off to their designated areas. It's just a thing. I'm not blaming anybody because we tried to change it. We're just kind of like, what is it? And that's something that shows that Montana is a healthy church. What is it that's going to bring people in so we can fellowship with each other and we can learn? That's a hot take right there. Another thing that they do is that at one point, I had another guy tell me, we changed it to where we just had the Sunday morning, and then we had these optional groups throughout the week on multiple different days. You can go to this person's house this day, this person's house this day, this person's house this day, because it gives them variety on what they can do. And then they get to go to someone's home. They get to fellowship in a smaller group, because sometimes smaller group stuff, people like that. I like that because you can just talk with a few people that are around you. You don't feel as kind of just lost in the crowd kind of deal. And what happened? There's tons of people that went to it. Tons of people loved it. Boom, they did it. So what attracts believers to a church is if they have good programs that are organized and that are adjusting to what it is that's happening in the church now. That's how it goes. Now, through in all of those little things, because there's so many little things that attract believers. And here's the thing. If someone is a believer and they're really dedicated to that church, they're going to try to help that church. Pastors are very cautious. What I mean by that is that when somebody would come to the church and they say, oh yeah, well, where are you from? Well, I'm from here. I've been living here for a while. Okay, well, what church were you going to? Oh, going over there. And the red flag that immediately shoots up is when that person immediately starts complaining about what the pastor was doing. Everyone in the congregation. Now, granted, yes, they could have done something wrong, and that would need to be addressed. But the majority of the time, it's just those shoot up is because as soon as they get settled into where you're at, the way the music was. I'm going to go to this other one. That's the most common. And it's just like, okay, well then you're going to find something wrong with the music there, and then you're preaching there and go to another one. Somebody that like, I moved, I have to go to a different church. Let me see what you guys offer. That's a little bit of a different situation. Or as I always, if the church has legitimately done them wrong, like, or I have a friend who had this, he's pastoring in Indiana. I won't say names just for disclaimers and stuff because we're recording. But he had it's a couple and they have a daughter, and there was some sexual abuse that had happened to the brother of this daughter. And they're just like, hey, this is an ongoing problem. They just installed a door with a window so they can watch them better. And it's not. Absolutely not. It was kind of just like, oh, at least we installed the window. But the mother and the daughter were just like, absolutely not. We're going to a different church. They came to my friend's church, and one thing, so they've been going to his church. That's an example of somebody did wrong to somebody. All right, now we're still on attracting. We're still on attracting people. We talked about believers, mainly just focused on those little nitty-gritty things that attract believers. But what attracts believers? All right. Two things that attract non-believers. How often do you see someone come into a church and they're having a hard time, and they come to church because they feel like they need some kind of guidance, or they are just like, I haven't had a relationship with God. I'm going to church because I'm about to die. Somebody in my family died. I'm going through. And also because of a relation from the church. Now, Ethan, if you want to come chill up here, I'm going to mess with him for a little bit. Just picking on him. I want to talk about how did Jesus witness? Something that I spoke to about one of these pastors, I said, you know, when you look at Jesus and his example of things, you want to grab that mic and like bring it toward you, is that there is a very huge difference between what Jesus sees. What was his demeanor like? Was he nice to them? No. Was he harsh to them? Absolutely. They know better. I was here, not last time I was here, but one time me and Pastor Dave were doing those controversial topics. I talked about the unforgivable sin, where Jesus says, like, this is the unforgivable sin. And one of the major points that I pointed out was that the reason why this was so adamant to Jesus, and Jesus, when he said that this is unforgivable, was basically like, buddy, you're right here from crossing the line. Basically how I read that from now on because of the way I read it. You're right here from crossing the line. This will be unforgivable if you keep going. What did he do? He backed up. Because what did Jesus also have? Jesus had credibility. And that's something we have to build with ourselves. Jesus was the Messiah out doing miracles. He was teaching. He had crowds gathering around. Now, how was he with sinners? Got two different stories. Was he harsh with sinners? He was compassionate. Thank you, Ralph. Jesus was compassionate to sinners. He was nice to sinners. Which has made me think more and more, hot take, all right? Who knows? My opinion may change in 10 years. I'm 25. Fire and brimstone approach. Now, granted, if you feel like the Holy Spirit to do that, because, there could be some sinners out there that they know better, and you just got to get stern with them and just be like, brother, if you're going to die today, are you going to heaven or hell? That classic line that might be leading you to do something like that is perfectly fine. But we just look at it and we're just kind of like, maybe it's not really the greatest approach. What do you guys think? Don't actually say anything. Tell me later. I'm just telling you to think. What do you guys think? Is that a good approach? I don't know. From what I've read so far, people of the coming wrath in Revelation, he's talking to the 7 churches. I want to go reread everything that I've read because I could be wrong. But Jesus was compassionate. And for example, just 2 examples is the woman at the well. What was the woman at the well doing? Had multiple husbands. She was basically out committing adultery. And here's the thing. When I hear about stories like that, I get mad. How could that woman do such a thing like that? I get upset. Even with guys, just like, how could he do something like that? Like, what a moron. Just God, he knows all this. And sometimes if we knew all the dirty details, but Jesus just walks up to this well, he sits with this woman, and he's just like, if only you knew who I was, who I am. If only you knew. And what does he tell her? She goes and speaks to everybody, but it's just the same thing as also the woman who's about to get stoned. She was about to get stoned. The Pharisees drag this woman out. Real Christ-like right there. Just drag her out, bring her into the middle. This woman is committing adultery. How humiliating is that for her? First off, to be dragged out, everyone knows you're dirt, and they're about to kill you. They're about to stone you right there. Through some trauma. That woman's going through a definite hard time. She's dead. By the law, she should be dead. And he just sits down, starts writing. I still want to know what he wrote. People have their takes on what he wrote, but who knows? Some people think he was writing down the sins of everybody that was sitting. When everybody walks away and that woman is there, he goes up to her. No doubt this woman is sobbing. She's probably still on her knees in the dirt. He goes up to her, go on your way, sin no more. And that's a key thing that Jesus does say. Is he doesn't just say, it's okay, get up and walk away. No, he says, gather your things, get up, sin no more. Same with a man that was at the well. Jesus told him to get up, take his mat. He goes off. Jesus sees him again later, and he tells him, because he probably knows, he says, stop, this may happen to you. And this man had been paralyzed for over, I think it was 30 or 20 years, sitting next to that pool, going through major suffering. And Jesus says, stop sinning or you'll probably go through something worse. So even though he was more compassionate to those people, he was also pretty intense. So what I'm going to do with Ethan right now is we're just going to go through, what does witnessing look like now? All right. So I talked about health. It has its place. Yes, it does. But like street preachers that are just yelling at everybody about damnation and stuff like that. I think it's the Southern Baptists that kind of like, they go a little too far. They're a little bit too intense. But I know some street preachers, and I've asked some questions just like, how effective is this? Does this really get you a lot? He's like, a lot of the responses that I hear is just kind of like, well, I don't really see the results, but they're there. And you know what? He's probably right. Conversation or him talking could maybe put a thought in somebody's head. They go and they find somebody. Boom, there they go. They get in their life. They get discipled. Fantastic. Is the stone. Kind of like, this is how it goes. But nowadays, in our culture, we are not sociable people. Ethan, stand up really quick. Say that me and Ethan are just a couple of guys in the store. Tell me how annoying this would be. Be